Welcome to the REL Freedom Podcast, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. Hi, Mike Swenson here with REL Freedom. You know, this episode of our REL Freedom Stories is going to be a little bit different. So recently we had an event called Freedom Con, and on there we had some wonderful guests that shared their stories and some of their tips and successes on their journey towards financial and time freedom. In this particular episode, we're going to pick up with Hergenrother, and he's going to talk about his story of how he helped build a billion-dollar company. So we're going to pick up from the event, and we hope you enjoy it.
So Adam is CEO of a billion-dollar company. That is a wonderful feat, and I'm sure he'd love to share that with you. KW Market Center owner, also is owner of the HergGroup, which has locations all over. I've got a map on the kind of the final slide here, which you guys can see. Also has construction company, coaching and training organization. So just a guy who knows how to get a lot out of life and do it with purpose, which is really what he's going to share today. So,
well, I'm just hoping that people spend a few minutes with me and realize that if I can do it, they can do it. That's kind of the whole intention of this is for everybody. Let me share my screen. Well, again, thanks. And I want to thank all you guys for presenting, but also for putting this on. A lot of people don't understand the time and energy it takes to put these events on, and for the value that you're bringing to, entrepreneurs and really kind of helping people from the wealth side. So thanks guys and all the speakers for joining in and jumping in and helping out. I just want to start. I love this quote. This is something that I look at on a daily basis, which is just as really only the disciplined ones in life are truly free. And I'm going to get into freedom and what that means to me, and I'll probably approach it from a little bit different angle than I know Vlad and I had a little conversation about it. If you know anything about me, I love to go really deep inwardly. I was on, I'll just clip the slide over here to kind of give you a little example of this. That's me on the left. I know it's crazy compared to where I was. The metamorphosis is kind of my life. So probably around 2000, I bought my first investment property when I was a freshman in college. I was actually renting in a place, and I bought my first one to start building wealth. In fact, I actually started buying multiple investment properties before I actually even owned a place myself personally, because I saw it as a liability. So I started buying real estate early on, which then it kind of got me into real estate. At this time in my life, I was very mercenary driven. I was all about money. I was very hubris. I was very like the world should kind of bow down to me. And I really was kind of building this and trying to prove to myself and to the world that I can make money. And then I had this wonderful idea that if I was going to make, and at that time for me, it was about $500,000 net income. If I was going to make $500,000 in income, somehow the world was going to just show up with this giant present that I was going to open up, and it was going to make me feel perfect. And and when I was 26, I hit this. And I remember having this conversation with my mom, and I shared this story as I was sitting there. My mom's the most unassuming person, doesn't care anything about money. And I was like, hey, I made about $500,000 in net income, and I'm in little Vermont where we have more cows than people. And she was like, oh, that's great. Like, pass the ketchup. And I realized in that moment right then that people just don't care. People don't care about what you're doing necessarily unless it impacts them in some way. And so I actually got not necessarily like depressed, but I got pretty down on myself, because I had been after, since college, I had been after this goal of, hey, this linear progression. If I can just get this, the next, I'll be happier. Then once I get this, I'll do it. And it must be this next number. And when it didn't hit it at 100,000, I was like, must be 250. That must be the number. Then it was 300. Then it was, if I get to 500, that's definitely going to be the rival point in my life. And when I hit it, I just realized that there was nothing externally that was actually going to give me any lasting joy in my life. And so for about a year and a half, I kind of went around and tried to figure out what was going on in my life. And I realized at that point that it had nothing to do externally, and this was all internal. And so for the last 14 years of my life, I've been on this inward journey, which is this kind of metamorphosis of my life in itself. Starting out building very mercenary, all about what can people do for me? How can I get something out of a person? I would show up in my office and how am I going to get something out of this buyer agent or this person or this employee? And sure, that works, and you can run a profitable company that way. I'm not saying you can't. If that's your culture, that's awesome. It wasn't for me. And so over the years, we've spent much more focus on, this is kind of how I explain it. At the end of the day, for each individual, something tips the scales, either culture or money. And you get to pick which one. And so for me, I wanted to, in the beginning, it was about money tip the scales, all for money. And then over the course of my life, as I kind of continued to make this transition, I realized that I never wanted to build an organization that I wanted to run away from. I never wanted to build a life that I was trying to get out of. I was never trying to have a life that I was trying to get through Monday, to get to a Friday, to get to a weekend. I actually wanted to build something that I was excited about coming to work and using my enthusiasm and energy to create and build, in a life with my family and close friends that I got to celebrate with. And so I started taking a different thinking approach to this. And the interesting thing about this is the minute I really started making all of these inward changes in my life, my organization started growing rapidly. I now own, 4 market centers. We have, everything just started growing exponentially into all the things that we were really looking forward to doing. And our construction company, HRG, everything, our coaching, our foundation work, everything started growing. And the funny thing is I cared less about let me rephrase that. So when all of this kind of started working towards that direction, I started putting in place that I wanted to build an organization where people came here because they wanted to be part of our organization for life. Now, I'm not foolish to think that everyone's going to stay there for life, but that's the mentality that I wanted to start with. So many people in real estate, particularly in the real estate world, we're living this transitory environment where people come and go all the time. And that's part of it, and that's fine. But I didn't want to have this turnover rate. When we started building HRG, we had a turnover rate. We'd bring 30 agents in and 30 would leave. And I remember going to my leadership team 5 or 6 years ago and just saying, or maybe 4 years ago, and just saying, hey, I don't want to build a company like this. Yes, we were making money, but I don't want to be showing up every day and not knowing who the 30 people are or 30 people coming in. It's not how I want to build my organization. And so we developed and we sat down with our entire leadership team, and I said, I want to partner with people that want to be with us for life and at least take that approach when we're first getting into business with each other. And so we made the decision that we weren't going to bring anybody into our organization that wasn't 51% culture first, 49% profit. And so that's literally and since we've put that into place, one of the things that I'm most proud of our team is we have a 95.7% retention rate with our agents, and we have about 240 agents on our team. So it's not like 5 or 6 people in there. Our retention rate has grown at the same level as our ability to attract the people that want to be part of our organization. And part of this, guys, what really changed for me was, instead of running down, this is how I picture a lot of people building their organizations, is let's say you're 100 yards from a stage and you're in an auditorium with 1,000 people. And most people start from the back and they want to run towards the stage, and they start stopping the audience and grabbing people and throwing them over their shoulder, and then grabbing another person and throwing them a sled. And they're trying to carry these people up to the stage. They're trying to carry them with them in their business, instead of really being very clear on who you are, who you want to attract, what you do, and what you stand for with your mission and vision. And then as you run towards the stage, you want to see who stands up and runs with you. You have a lot more energy behind you with your organization when you're hiring people that want to run faster than you. Every day, I think a lot of us are in situations where we're bringing people up the mountain, and then at night we let them go, and the next morning or the next couple of days we're doing the same thing over and over, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting because you're trying to get people who really don't want to run at your level, versus when you can really take the approach of, I want to lead with culture, and I'm only going to be in relationship with people who are reaching out to us and really want to be part of our ecosystem. Not because, look, anybody can get leads, anybody can be paid a certain dollar amount. Those things are kind of ubiquitous. What people can't get is your culture, your ecosystem, your growth, the conversations that we have around personal growth, using this as business is nothing but this conduit for personal growth. If you think of anything different, in my opinion, you're just approaching business for the wrong ways. And so now, as we kind of start looking at how we build our organizations, we take the approaches when we show up in the parking lot. There's 2 things that I encourage all of our CEOs or our leaders to do. Number 1 is to make sure that when you're walking inside, you're not trying to get something from anybody. You're trying to go there and contribute. I wouldn't even use the word serve, because like a flower opens up every day, and you wouldn't walk by a dandelion and say, are you serving today? It's just contributing. And so when you just wake up and you want to contribute to the well-being of other people, and when you're doing that, you then become one of the reasons, or the reason why somebody else wants to show up for work. And so we have this ethos in our world of all Adam Hergenrother companies. We've got, 600 or so people. And between all of those people in our world, I want to ask every single one of them is, why do you want to be what can you do so that you're the reason why somebody else wants to show up for work? And I think if you can, each person can answer that question, everybody is growing together. And so when I think about the metamorphosis of my life, I think it's really important to kind of point out the thinking patterns, the challenges that we've had, but also the mistakes that I've made in this into where we are today in terms of being able to really be excited about showing up for work and contributing and growing. And yes, there's challenges. Every second there's challenges. In fact, most of anything that shows up at my desk now, nothing good shows up here. I mean, it's like at this stage, anything that's good, people are taking and running, and our CFOs or CEOs or organizations are handling. It's the things they can't handle that show up here. So I understand it's all about those challenges and things, but man, when you can come together and make room for other people, you just start growing at a different pace and everyone starts running together. You want your organization running so that if you have 4 people in your organization, the 4 plus 4 is not 400%, it's 700%. And the only way that happens, that type of cumulative amount of energy we can take on other things, is if everybody's rowing in the same direction, everyone's running in the same direction, and you've created that. So that's kind of the metamorphosis of this. Now, I know we're talking about freedom here, and this is, I love this conversation. So thanks for inviting me to have this. There are 2 different types of freedom in my world. And hopefully you can follow me a little bit. If I go too deep, I apologize on this. There's what I refer to as relative freedom. The relative freedom is I'm financially free. I have money to do what I want. I have leverage and employees so I can do what I want in my business. There's some physical freedom where you're in good enough shape where you can do most of the things that you want to do. Then there's, the maybe even, social freedom to go hang out with your partners or your family. So there's this relative freedom that we can have in our life. And that's what most people are after. But I have to ask you the question is, has that really made you create and have this sustaining level of joy? Does financial freedom really give you the joy that you're looking for? And the answer, if you're honest with yourself, is no. You're still disturbed. And so I always unpack this to one more layer. Is I believe there's what's called the absolute freedom, which is what I believe most and everybody is searching for, particularly on this call. The absolute freedom is to be able to walk through this world not being disturbed, so that anybody can say anything to you at any point in time. And yes, you have to deal with it, but you're no longer getting disturbed. Yes, you can make $1 billion, you can lose $1 billion. You're still not getting disturbed. You may not be happy about it, but you have this joy and your peace in your life. You may be, midnight on a interstate changing your tire in the middle of the rain, which may not have a bunch of happiness, but you can still have joy. You may be lying in your deathbed at some point in time, and you may not be happy about it, but you can still have a sense of peace around it. So there's this underlying absolute freedom, that this yearning for authenticity that people are after. And so the first ways you kind of start to uncover what is freedom is to ask yourself is, am I searching for something externally to make myself turned on inside? Which is what we're doing. We're looking for things, we're trying to get there indirectly. And what I mean by that is, when you say, I feel great, what you really mean is you have this uplifting amount of energy through your system. So if you get a big deal or you hire a big agent or you make a bunch of money that month, momentarily you feel this surge of energy come in there. And you feel a surge, so it lifts you up. What lifts you up? Energy does. The freedom is to have this energy rolling through you at all times, no matter what is happening. Because my starting position in life is there's me who's in here, the witness who is witnessing this human being experiencing everything. You are the witness who gets to experience life. There's life and then there's everything else. And so when you stop becoming so fixated on everything else in terms of thinking that is you, you'll have this ability to start working on yourself to walk around with ultimate freedom. It's like you wouldn't walk up to your car. If somebody says who you are, you're not going to say, I'm my car. No, your car is just a vehicle for you. So is it your body, and so is it your mind. Those are just vehicles. They are just tools in your existence. They are tools that you get to experience life with. It's like you have a heart. Your heart can have incredible lows. It can have grief. It can have joy. It can have incredible highs. And it's got the spectrum of it. Without a heart, you would miss the richness and texture of life. And so without the mind, you'd have to think about all whose names are, what time I showed up. And it's just like this, it's just your analytical mind is your ability to memorize and to have things so that you can process things faster. But your mind is not designed to create a collage, an image of who you think you are. Because the minute you start spending all of your time, which is what most people are doing, of creating this self-image or this self-identity that they're spending 99% of their energy upholding every single day. The minute that starts to get rocked, you have no freedom. I don't care if you have $1 billion and that starts, your self-image starts to get rocked, you're disturbed. You're now hurt, right? When Tony Robbins wrote his book, The Financial Game, Mastering the Game of Money, it's a long book, but at the very end of it is one of my favorite chapters in the whole book. And he interviews 20 billionaires. And these guys, billionaires, they're doing okay, right? Money-wise, they've got it. And one of the things he asked them, the first question he asked every single one of these individuals, he goes, do you still worry about money? And unequivocally, within seconds, every single one of them said, yes, I do. Yes, I do. It still stresses me. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's not freedom. You're still being a slave to an external environment that you can't control. If you try to control life out there, you're going to set yourself up for a lot of suffering. So mindfulness or waking up is realizing that there's another layer to this freedom that we talk about. It's the reason why you have this itch inside when you make when you make money or get into a relationship or have the wedding or have your kid and get your house and put a fence around it and get your dog, and you're wondering why there's still this unsatisfied part of you, because that part of you can never be satisfied for anything external. It'd be like trying to go to a rock when you're thirsty. It's not doing anything for you. I get it that momentarily it turns you on. And I can get into a whole layer of why your mind does that to you, but it's a long conversation for it. So what I would love for you to take away from this is just to understand is look back in your life 30 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, wherever your life is and your life journey has. I bet along the way you've said, if I can just do that, I will have made it and I'll be happy. And every time you get there, there's no arrival point. There's no point where you just say, oh, now I'm free, right? There's no dollar sign or house or relationship that you ever get in that you go, now I'm free. That's because you're still indirectly looking for it. So when the term freedom comes up, there's relative freedom, like saying the sun sets every day, which really it's relative, right? It doesn't really set every day. And then there's the absolute freedom, which is unpacking you, which is you working on yourself inwardly so that you can then go out there and be this fierce competitor in business. Because the reality is, once you understand that you have this absolute freedom about yourself, when you can walk around not being disturbed by anything, you're clear, your ability to see and have perspective changes instantly. Your ability to solve problems, just like Einstein said 70 years ago, if you can never solve a problem the same level that's created, you don't become the emotion. It doesn't mean you push them away. It doesn't mean you don't experience the emotions. If you're experiencing something in life, you should experience it, but don't push it or don't cling to it. Let the experience go through you, and it makes you more of a whole, enriched human being. So understand there's you way back here who's just witnessing. It witnesses the mind. It witnesses life going by, witnessing the clouds. Think of it this way. You are the sky. The sky never goes anywhere. Sometimes it's dark. Sometimes it's sunny. Sometimes there's clouds going through it. Sometimes there's birds. Sometimes there's lightning bolts. Sometimes there's rain. Sometimes there's snow. There's all of this that manifests in the field of sky. You're the same exact experience. There's you back there, which you know is imperishable, which you know is constant, which can't be hurt. Energy itself cannot be sick. It can only be blocked. And so when you recognize that you're the same thing as just witnessing the sky, then you allow all of these emotions to go through. Your mind's going to talk. I don't know about yours, but mine just starts talking. And it just says really weird things all the time. And then we start paying attention to it. And instead of paying attention to it, just let it do its thing. Look, an ignored guest quickly leaves. So the minute you stop paying attention to all your thoughts, at some point in time, the thought just disappears. You've probably had 70 thoughts since I've started talking, right? And here's I even challenge people on this about separating yourself from your mind, is that most people aren't listening to people. They're listening to themselves. They're listening to the mind narrate the conversation based on their self-image or their self-context. And that's all you're doing is you're listening to you're going to the mind of saying, you narrate this for me. So what you're doing is you're missing the direct experience in life. So I'm going to circle this back and I'm going to move on from this conversation about freedom. But when you ask about freedom, to me, freedom is absolute. It's freedom to experience all of life. And when I say all of life, I mean all of it. Not this concept of I want life to be my way. That's not freedom. That's a promise for suffering. That's you thinking at some point in your life, you're going to have this promised happiness once I get to this point. You're some future promising that something's going to happen. Why not enjoy yourself now? And so absolute freedom is walking around from that place. And here's a question that you can write down that you can take away for an action item from this. Actually, I'm going to give you two things. One of the things that I worked on really early on in my life was using a technique called 3-2-1 relax. The minute I felt myself get disturbed, and what I just going to unpack that word is just like when you get hit in your gut, you start feeling the energy drop, right? You know what I'm talking about. Like all of a sudden it feels empty. And people go like, my heart dropped. Your heart didn't go anywhere. Your heart is still there. What you're saying is my energy got blocked. You shut off. You closed your heart. And so therefore the energy is not feeding you. So then you have to go outside to get fed. And so we're going to stop that. And so 3-2-1 relax. The minute you start feeling tightness, that you feel like this disturbance, 3-2-1 relax. Breathe out, drop your shoulders, breathe 5 times. And you may have to do 3-2-1 relax 30 times in the next hour. There's some big things in there, right? So anyways, so 3-2-1 relax. The second technique that I'll give you to work on, and these are very simple, just start very small with these things, is this. Next time you think you have a problem, I want you to ask yourself, do you really actually have a problem? And this is the question I want you to ask with it, is there actually anything wrong in this moment? What is wrong in this moment? And what you'll find 99.9% of the time is that there's absolutely nothing wrong in this moment. What is wrong is you're imagining some future event that could go wrong or that could happen, which we know 99% of the time it doesn't unfold the way your mind just drummed it up. And so you're suffering for that reason. And if you ever are in a situation like being chased by a bear, you're not going to stop and go, what is wrong with this moment? You're just going to be in the moment and running away from the bear. So the times that you actually have a life-threatening situation that something's wrong in this moment, you're not going to be sitting there thinking about it. You're just going to be acting. In fact, that's probably one of the only times you're actually going to be in the moment. That's why I love sports so much. If you're skiing or running or, competing or any of those things, you're in the moment. You're not going to your mind. And so you get to experience life for what it is. And that is absolute freedom for me. All right. Let's switch gears a little bit unless you guys want to stop me. All right. So sometimes it takes a slide counter like a couple seconds to do it. Now I want to jump into the biggest mistakes that people make. And there's 2 slides on this. And I'm going to unpack it in the next slide a little bit more. But really for me, the biggest mistakes that I've made growing my organizations are, number one, time. These are the things that for me and that I see most entrepreneurs making. Number one is time, is not using their time wisely, which for me, I made the decision to measure my days and minutes instead of measuring my days or weeks. And really not holding yourself or your team to the standards of productivity. Look, there's 3 principles that guide my life. The first one is I have to organize myself in the most efficient way to get the highest output in my life. So when I wake up, I say, am I organizing my time, organizing myself in the most efficient way to get the highest output, given the time I'm willing to give for each activity? So each day I live, work, and play. I don't wait till I'm 60 years old to go play. I live, work, and play every day. I get up early around 4 o'clock in the morning. I do a lot of personal development. I exercise for a couple hours, and I have a certain amount of time that I'm willing to allocate to my business. That's 4 days structured a week. It's actually 3.5 structured days. And I work from 8:30 to 11:30, and then 11:30 to 1 is a break, and from 1:30 to about 5. And so I have a certain amount of time that I'm willing to give my business. What this does, though, is makes me extremely impactful in what goes into my calendar. And it makes me really focus on the minutes that I'm doing. The really interesting thing was the minute I started removing myself from my organizations, I realized I was the problem. My organization started doing so much better. They realized that the minute I started getting out of it, the only reason why I was even stepping in there is because I felt like I needed to make myself feel better about myself. So once I realized that, it was good. So then I just really started measuring my day in minutes. And if I were sitting in a room and we had all of you on here right now and I asked you, I said, hey, what do you value most in your life? Most people are going to say their family or their kids, right? And I would say, okay, great. I would say, well, give me your calendar of what you actually did for the past 30 days, and then give me your bank account of where you actually spent your money, and I'll tell you what you really value. Because a lot of us have this audible, and then we convince ourselves that these things matter the most. And I get the intention behind it. And yes, if there was a life-threatening situation, you would probably put that first. But what about the simple everyday practices of this? If you tell me your kids matter the most, then why wouldn't you make the most out of every moment that you're working so you can actually have time to go spend with them? It would probably change the way you invest into people. It would change the way you invest or spend your money so you can actually have time to spend with your family. So when people say this, you have to be very clear and look at it honestly about what is actually happening with your time. So start measuring it in minutes. Number one, money is really the same thing with time, is measuring your dollars in dollars. You have to protect yourself from your own money. When people have a good month, if all of a sudden, whatever good means to you, maybe $50,000 in profit is a good month. It's an awesome month. Maybe you're used to 10,000. So all of a sudden that month of 50,000, you stop paying attention. You thought $100 was a lot before. You stop paying attention to the $100. Now you're like, well, it's only 1,000. I made 50 grand over here. So you have to have protective measures in place to protect you from your own money, which is a whole wealth component of this. Money, by the way, is nothing but a tool. If you think money is anything else but a tool, you're still attached to money. Money is good for the money that it can do and for the good that it can do. And it can do a lot of really cool things. Money can make your life easier, but for anybody listening to this call, it's not going to make yourself happier or going to have any more joy. At some point, the only things that really money is going to do is give you maybe investing it into like non-negative or some negative things that turn positive. Meaning, like, if you invest money into a dishwasher that isn't working so you get some time back, that'll probably make you a little happier in your life. But investing into, like a new car that really is get you to the same place will make you feel good for a small period of time. And then it's just a car. Then it's just there. So invest your money into things that are already having negative impact on your life, like the dishwasher, for instance, or getting some time back or having somebody mow your yard. You kind of know those things. But measure and I'll get into it a little bit more in the next slide, but measure your day in minutes, measure your dollars in dollars. And then for me is not really investing into the right people at the right time. I wish I invested into people earlier on in my life. And so I missed that. So I'm going to jump into this next one. So time, money, and people. By the way, the interesting thing is the biggest challenges that you're ever going to have in your life are money and people. And if you have the right people, they're going to give you the right growth opportunity for it. If you have the wrong people, they're going to suck your money away. And so just remember that those are two of the biggest things you have to pay attention to with your money. For me, overarching, it's so funny, Mike and Vlad, the other day, I have 3 kids under 8. My youngest son, I have one son, so I guess he's my youngest. My middle child is 6. And I'm laying in some of the sweetest time we have is like the 30 minutes before we go to bed. I always snuggle with him. I'm just kind of like hanging out with him. And he just shares some thoughts with me. And the other day he goes to me, he goes, Dad, randomly, he goes, what was the biggest mistake you made in business? And I was like, dude, what an awesome question, man. I'm like, thanks for just asking the question. And so I had to think about it for a second. And I said, you know what, Asher, that's my son's name. I said, hey, buddy, I'll tell you the biggest mistake that I made was making success more complicated than it needed to be. And he said, well, what does that mean? And I tried to unpack it, and like 5 minutes into it, he was like, so anyways, what are we doing tomorrow? Like, he just kind of got off the topic. But I'll explain it in a little more detail. What I mean by this is success in most organizations is extremely simple. Yet we feel this need when success starts to occur in our lives, and meaning we're starting to make money. And we're starting to make money, particularly through other people. You can start to feel like a fraud. You can feel like an imposter. At least I did. Like, it's like, oh my God, I'm making all this money and I'm not doing anything anymore. So then what you do is then you go back to this self-image that you've created. You go, well, I need to make myself feel better. So I'm going to go complicate some things in my life so I can go solve them or fix them. Or in fact, we should actually have another meeting so I can be a part of that, so I can contribute, so I can pat myself on the back when I go home to make myself feel good. And all you realize is you're the one complicating everything in your business. It's like if there's a rock underneath a river that is blocking your business, and it's because it's tied to it. And when you go down to lift the rock up, you realize your right arm is the one holding the rock down. It's like if you just let the right arm go, the business would take off. And so, man, that's been the number one thing for me that I've made a mistake for too long was holding on because I needed to feel validated. You know, Matthew McConaughey is a good friend of mine. He's not really, but we just pretend we are. But he's he's a stud of a dude, and he wrote this new book out called Green Lights. And one of the things that he talks about in his book is running downhill. And what he says about running downhill is that he's like, man, when you're running downhill, like things start to become too easy and they start to feel too easy. So therefore I used to trip myself. Like I would just trip myself, or I'd trip somebody else just so I could stop them and fix them. And then he said, but you know, when you're running downhill, there's always an uphill afterwards. So he said, throughout my life, I started realizing that I needed to enjoy the downhill and prepare myself for the next uphill. Maybe you're doing really well in business and then all of a sudden something happens in your personal life. Maybe you're doing really well in your personal life and something happens in your business. Look, life is not supposed to be on your terms. It's not supposed to be easy. There's supposed to be experiences that you get to experience and enjoy. So we shouldn't label them, I like them or don't like them. Understand that you would want things to be your way, but if there's 10 people out there, we all have 10 different ways we want the world to be. The poor world is just trying to unfold. And we're like, but it needs to be that way, then it needs to be that way, and then it needs to be nice over here, and farmers say it needs to rain, right? It's just your life is a dance, and she's in the lead, and so just accept that, right? So for me, when I think about the mistakes that I made, one of the biggest ones, it's overcomplicating success instead of simplifying. So the little formula I have is success equals simplicity, and failure equals complexity. And so I would go back into your organizations right now and go, where am I complicating things just to get value? Where am I overcomplicating something? What am I holding on to that I need to let go of right now? Because we're all holding on to some rope that we need to let go of. You know, it always reminds me of how they catch wild monkeys. And I bet you didn't think we were going to bring monkeys into this conversation, but we will. It's a good point. How you catch, in anywhere that has monkeys, essentially if there's a wild monkey they need to catch it, what they'll do is they will put a cage and they'll put a banana in the cage. And the cage is, you can't go in the cage, but the cage is blocked off. Say it's like a 2x2 cage and it's got just enough opening like this big so that a monkey can reach his hand in there. And what they do is they put a banana in there. So the free monkey is always free, walks over to the cage, puts its hand in there and realizes it can't pull the banana out. So it's holding on to the banana. The monkey is entirely free. Then somebody just walks up and picks up the monkey. The whole time the monkey is free, but it won't let go of the banana. It thinks that it needs it so bad that it can't let go of it. That's how most of us are holding on to our personal lives and our business lives. We're holding on to this banana, yet we're free. We're already absolute freedom, but we're holding on to something that's so silly because we think that's who we need to be. We think we need to be the banana. You just let it go. The minute you let it go, you're free. You're already free. You just got to let go. It's the same thing for your business as well, too. You're holding on to something that you need to let go of. All right, so when I think about time, money, and people, I think about this as well too, is time is meetings in general or productivity or any of these things need to be cut down. So a tactical thing from this, I'm just trying to give tactic things so people can take away from each slide. What I would do from here is, and what we personally have done, Hallie and I over the years, is literally go the next week and cut all of your standing appointments by 50%. Everyone should. You can go back to them just for 1 week. So if you have an hour-long appointment, bring it down to 30 minutes. If you have a 30-minute appointment, bring it down to 15. If you have 15, bring it down to 7.5. Because here's the thing, when somebody goes, hey, Mike, can I get 30 minutes on your calendar? Did somebody really stop to think about how long it would take to engage in this conversation and realize that they, after doing all these calculations, they derived that they need 30 minutes of your time, right? No, they just said, can I grab 30 minutes? And what you do in these meetings is everyone goes in there and you're a couple of minutes late, you're talking about things and you get into the heart of things for like 6 minutes. And then people realize there's still 10 minutes left. So they figure out something else to talk about just to extend the time. And then magically at 29 minutes and 50 seconds, they figure out a way to adjourn. Instead of going like, hey, you've got 7 minutes. We've got 3 minutes. Let's jump into this. And Vlad, I know you're a big proponent of this because when you and I have our conversations, you're like, I need 90 seconds of your time. Right. And it's just, we're in and out and we get to the point and it's great. And people respect that. So with your meetings, cut it down in 50%. Next week, just cut it down to 50%. Money, when you're deploying, we have almost 1,000 units in either that are owned or in development right now for our construction company with healthcare campuses and building these things out. construction and development can be an awesome asset. It can also wreck you. It can wreck you faster than anything else can, because you have debt and mortgage and all these things that all of a sudden show up, and all this capital out on a project that could go nowheres. So one of the things early on that I had to put like $500,000 or $600,000 in my company in the first couple of years, because I went out there and tried to just get as many projects as I could, didn't realize they took a long time to actually see the benefit from. So we had to walk a line there for a little while. In fact, we still are. We just got so much money deployed in these projects. It takes so long that you got to be real careful with them. And people don't realize in development is you could have $1 million in a project. That's all after tax money. If you spend $500,000 a year, you can't take that as an expense because it's a capital improvement until the project's now sold or done. Then you can take it as expense, but your money's going out there after tax. So if you put $1 million into a project, that's like $1.6 million before tax. So people's got to be very careful about the traps of development. So that was, for me, I learned that lesson early on about making sure that you don't go too fast, too far. Success is sequential, not simultaneous, which I at first approached as simultaneous, because in the brokerage side where I lived to begin with was like, well, let's just go get as many as you can. That doesn't work in development, or it doesn't work with W-2 employees either. So you just got to be careful on how you're spending that as well. And then again, people, really making the decision to invest through people. A business is where truly you're succeeding through others. And I think that there's three kind of thinking evolutions around investing into people. And I kind of look at it as this: at some point, at least in real estate, you walk into, or any sales position, you walk into, say, Verizon, and you walk in there and you say, hey, Justin, I wonder who in here I could buy or sell a house with. Who going to be a client of mine in here? Then as you kind of evolve a little bit, maybe you walk in there and you say, hey, I wonder who I could hire in here. I wonder who I could hire in here that then goes out and sells and helps me build my organization. Then at some point, as you continue on your journey, you're going to walk in there and you're going to go, how do I buy everything? The real estate, the company, and then how do I make that more efficient? That's what Warren Buffett does. He's a savant when it comes to that. He literally just buys operating companies. Like when he bought Coca-Cola, his flagship first purchase, he realized this: it was already extremely profitable. He paid a lot of money for it. And he realized that there was 7 to 8 million bottles of Coke that were sold every day. So he just did this simple math. It was so simple. That's why success is simplicity. He said, well, I can buy this company, and all I got to do is raise Coca-Cola by 1 cent. Nobody will even notice. And I've just added $360 million plus to the bottom line. That puts our evaluation at 10 times what I just paid for it. He did that the next day when he bought it. He instantly, it's the same thing when Amazon just bought Whole Foods. The day that Amazon bought Whole Foods stock went up higher than the entire acquisition price. I mean, so these are the things that success is simple if you're willing to look at it from a simplistic nature of these things. And then, so investing into the right people, and then being willing to make the wrong hires on your way through leadership. And I think that's really important. Is a lot of people make a wrong hire and they think that it's them or think they can't do it, and they stop. You have to be willing to do it. And again, I said this before, but only the disciplined ones in life are truly free. If you are undisciplined, you are a slave to your moods and your passions. You just are. And this is Eliud Cupid, who broke the 2-hour marathon record. I love this quote, because if you're not disciplined in life, people think, oh, I live a disciplined life. If you're not disciplined, you're just a slave to your moods and your passions. It's like if you're not disciplined around your exercise, how many people wake up, even people who exercise 7 days a week, wake up going, I can't wait to exercise this morning. I don't. I mean, it's true. Like every day I still have this battle with my mind of the self-mastery of like, you don't have to exercise today. And I just go, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to go do it. You have to be disciplined. Otherwise, your moods and your passions run your life. So live your calendar, live a disciplined life in the areas that you want to be disciplined. You don't have to be disciplined in every part of your life, but in the areas that mean the most to you, which should be 1 or 2 things, make sure you're purposeful and make sure that you're disciplined in these particular areas so that you're not just a slave to how you feel that day. So here's some takeaways from this slide. And you can take a photo of this, whatever you want to do, but what standards do you have in your life, right? How many times a day these are standards in my life. You can take them, you can cross them out, you can steal them, I don't care. For me, I tell my kids I love them a certain amount of times every single day. And so towards the end of the day, if I haven't told them, I'll grab them and I'll go, Maddie, I love you. I love you. I love you. And why do I love you? And they go point to their heart. They go, because of my heart. And that's exactly right. So it's this little routine I always do with my kids. How many date nights a month do you have? And I don't like going out to dinner. Like that's just not my thing. So a date night to me is not going out to dinner. It's like walking or doing a board game together. Just a bunch of things you can do. So it doesn't have to be the standard, like, let's go out to dinner. I hate going to dinners. But anyways, so how many days are you willing to be away from your family on business? That's something you should have a standard for. How many hours are you in the office per day? How many books do you read a year? How many training events? Attach a number to everything. If you do not lead with numbers, you're just an emotional leader and you're relying on your moods and your passions to dictate your entire life. So when discipline equals freedom, take this and make sure that you're purposeful on attaching a number to anything that you're doing so that you're actually living a life that you can measure versus particularly in areas that you need to. All right, self-leadership precedes leadership. I started talking about the organization principles. You first organize yourself in the most efficient way so you can get the highest output. Then you organize your business in the most efficient way so that you're organizing people in the most efficient way as possible and keeping them focused so they have the highest output. And then you do the same thing for money. You organize your money in the most efficient way so it produces the highest output for the money that you have. Right? Same exact organizational principles. Self-leadership precedes leadership. And I believe my definition of self-leadership is overcoming, or self-mastery really is overcoming that voice inside your head that says no. That voice inside your head will sneak in there all the time. It's overcoming that voice. It's just not, and really mean overcoming, at some point you just realize you don't need to listen to it. The nature of the mind is to talk. 95% of the thoughts that are in there just show up. You don't think of those negative thoughts that come in, they just show up. It's not your fault. It's not anybody else's fault. They just show up, just like a cloud shows up. You have no control over the cloud. You have no control over 95% of your thoughts. The analytical mind is different. I'm talking about the personal judgmental mind just shows up. So self-leadership is leading yourself first, which really is what I've been talking about this entire presentation. Discipline, understanding what freedom really means, the mistakes, success equals simplicity instead of complexity. These are ways that you lead yourself and lead your business to perform at the highest level. And when you start doing this, this starts creating to what I think is the most important thing that any of us can do in business right now, which is this right here. I think the next generation of leaders are just as committed to their inner growth in their spiritual life as they are to spreadsheets and bottom lines. Look, our world is changing. Our world's in a different place. People are searching for authenticity. They're searching for the absolute freedom. They're searching for better strategies. They're searching for anything that they believe is going to raise the level of energy within them. And the only way that you truly do that is to put in the work, which means that you have to work inwardly. It's self-mastery, it's discipline. All of these things are training you to be able to sit with very tough emotions or sit in very tough situations and not be disturbed. And if you can live your life for going through life this way, where anything can happen and you can be okay with anything because you know you're not it, then you've reached the level of absolute freedom, which is being able to enjoy every aspect of this wonderful world that we call our life. All right. Done.
Wow.
Stop talking.
Adam, I will tell you this, man, I will be rewatching this because just like how much you've packed in a short period of time has been amazing. And I love your differentiation between absolute and relative freedom. I told you this before when we spoke on the phone. I was like, bam. Like that's a huge distinction for everybody who is on the path to freedom, right? Absolutely. And then one of my favorites is the simplicity, right?
Yeah.
And it's just success is simple, and man, we complicate everything. I think freedom is simple as well, and we tend to complicate it right here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Complicated. Adam, if people want to hear more about your teachings, about who you are and how you contribute, where can they find you?
Yeah, I think, we have a podcast that Hallie Warner and I do, my chief of staff. It's called Business Meets Spirituality. So it's really business meets spirituality is really the conversations we're having today. We created Business Meets Spirituality because I didn't want to go live in a cave and meditate all day. But yet I didn't want to have a business without fulfillment in life. And so I realized you just didn't have to choose. And that was a big struggle in my life about 10 years ago. It was like, well, how do I do both? Do I just go be a meditator or do I just be a business mercenary? And I realized, hey, you can actually incorporate both of them. that open heart. And so we have a lot of those conversations about how business meets spirituality and how you can use it for your personal growth. A lot of the stuff that we're talking about. So you go on any of your favorite, podcast players. We're on all of them. And then you can go to adamhergenrother.com. We have over 100 free trainings through our organization throughout the year. We give a lot of our content away for free. You can go check out the site. We'd love to have you there. And I'm always happy to answer any questions people have as well too.
Yeah. And then there's Project U, right? That you're running that I've heard nothing but awesome things about. So you can find more about Adam online, social media, and all the places that he mentioned. Adam, you are a true contribution. Thanks for knowing how much you value your time and how you plan your day, and that you're measuring it by minutes. Just know this, brother, that your minutes today have contributed to people's lives. Thank you.
Thanks again for